Dear myself, if you ever face a crossroads where you must choose between being a brilliant musician or a joyful one, choose joy. Always choose joy. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in Him. Psalm 43. Music isn't just an art form. It's a spiritual echo, a whisper from heaven. It flows through time and emotion and breathes meaning into the unspoken. It is, in many ways, the sincerest translator of the soul. And for me, it's become the initial language of my life, one I didn't even realize I was learning until I started speaking it fluently through a cello. Hey guys, welcome back to my podcast, Dear Myself. This is Laura speaking. Today's episode is a tender one. It's a letter, a tribute, a deep breath. It's about the thing that's been a part of me even before I knew how to name it. Music. Now, let me clarify something. Music isn't my entire life. I know people like to say music is my life, and while I admire the sentiment, that's not quite my truth. But music is a vital part of my life. It walks beside me like a quiet, faithful friend. Whether I'm praying, reading, eating, walking to class, doing gym, riding on a plane, sitting on a bus, or even taking a shower, music is there. Constant, comforting, and honestly, a little clinky, but in the best way. Music to me, it's a key to the world. A gift from God that allows me to speak without words, to connect without explanation, and to feel without fear. It's also been a way to heal, to grow, and to remember who am I while everything else feels loud and blurry. Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a young girl who adored music. No surprises there, right? I was the kind of child who would rather sit still and listen to a CD than run around outside. I know, shocking. From childhood to adulthood, my favorite thing in the world was always music. I didn't grow up in a symphonic household or a family of professional musicians, but the seeds were there. My mom had the most beautiful soprano voice, and she could play the piano back when she was in the middle school. Sadly, she forced to give it up due to circumstances. But fortunately, I inherited her musical instincts and, apparently, her flair of drama. Even when I was small, I was involved in everything artistic. My calendar was chaotic mosaic of music classes, painting workshops, and dance rehearsals. Not because anyone forced me, but because I couldn't get enough. I would rush home to choreograph ballet solos in the living room or sketch fashion designs with glitter pens. As I get older, I started making decisions. I begged my mom to let me learn something else. Anything other than the piano. No offense to pianists, but those 88 keys and I just didn't vibe. I was too restless to sit still and too romantic to stick to finger exercises or journeys. I wanted to sing. I wanted to move. I wanted to make music that felt like an extension of my body, not just my hands. And here's where it gets interesting. While my parents thought I might grow up to be a jewelry designer or a fashion stylist, something elegant and artisty, I had a different vision. I told them, compared to design jewels or clothing, I wanted to design my future. That line sounds dramatic, isn't it? But it was true. I wasn't looking for a life covered in gemstones. I was looking for resonance, meaning, and purpose. I remember watching a video of Jacqueline Dupré playing the Elgar Concerto. I don't even recall where I saw it, Was it on TV? A random YouTube suggestion? A borrowed DVD? It doesn't matter. What matters is how it made me feel. That moment hit me like lightning. The way she held the cello, the way she moved with it, the sheer emotional weight in every note. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. I sat there, absolutely still, and something inside me whispered, I must learn this instrument when I grow up. Simple as that, a calling, clocked in vibrato and bow here. But of course, life wasn't quite ready for me to follow that dream just yet, because we moved frequently. Finding a consistent cello teacher was like trying to nail jelly to a wall, messy and ultimately fruitless. Still, I didn't give up. I waited. In the meantime, I dabbled. I played the piano, sporadically. I learned the violin with moderate enthusiasm. I sang few opera arias and took music classes when I could. It was inconsistent, and honestly, I didn't practice very seriously. But those scattered notes formed the background melody of my life. And when the time finally came, when I was 17 years old, I said, now. So yes, I started cello at the age of 17. Thank God that it was not at 70, huh? For those unfamiliar with the classical music world, that's like deciding you wanted to be an athlete to attend Olympic in college. Most cellists who study in conservatory begin before they can even spell concerto. But me? I started when I was old enough to know how crazy it sounded, and still, I went for it. It wasn't completely from scratch. My earlier musical experiences gave me a foundation, a set of tools, even if rusty. I knew how to read music. I had basic rhythm and pitch recognition, and of course, perfect pitch. I just needed a fire. And thankfully, passion provided the spark. When people ask why I choose the cello, I say one word: passion. That was something about the way the cello felt, like an extension of my chest, my breath, my voice. I loved how I had to embrace it fully to make it sing. That's something very vulnerable about holding an instrument that way, almost like you're hugging your own soul. But I also knew I didn't have time to mess around. I had a big goal to get into a music school and become a real cellist. That means I had about 6 months to prepare for an audition most students had years to train for. And this is where God showed up with one of the biggest gifts in my journey: my first cello professor. I'll never forget our first lesson. I was nervous, clumsy, and about one bad note away from panic. But he looked at me with this calm smile and he said, "You're a genius. I guarantee you'll fall more and more in love with the cello." I mean, what a thing to say to a panicked teenager, right? But he meant it, and those words stuck with me. They became fuel. That summer, we created a plan that most people would call utterly bonkers. I practiced 7 to 8 hours a day. I had 2 lessons a week. I studied other academic subjects at midnight. I was homeschooled already, so I had the flexibility, but still, it was intense. A typical day looked like this. I woke up at 8 a.m. and 9 to 12 for fundamentals training and scales. 12 to 1 p.m. lunch with a nap, let's be honest. 3 to 6 p.m. Etudes and Bach. 8 to 10 p.m. repertoire practice. Then 10:30 to 12:30 a.m. academic studies. 1 a.m., collapsed into bed like a well-used cello string. I was exhausted. I was exhilarated. I was in love with the process, the challenge, the sound of progress, and I kept going. I sometimes wonder how I made it through the first half year of cello study. Maybe it was grace, maybe it was grit, maybe it was the caffeine, or maybe it was all three, danced together like a well-rehearsed trio. I poured everything I had into those 6 months, and miraculously, something magical began to happen. My body and the cello started to understand each other. Even a little bit, I think. The instrument that once felt foreign began to feel like a part of me, like a second voice, one that could sing emotions my words couldn't carry. By our third lesson, I played a 3-octave C major scale with a kind of precision and expression that surprised even my professor. In just 1 month, I'd conquered the proper middle school etudes. My professor looked at me like I'd just grown wings. He wasn't just impressed, he was inspired. And he began preparing me like a real cellist, not just a student learning to play an instrument. He handed me the music for Bach's Suite No. 3 Prelude, the Swan, and the first movement of the Sing-Song Cello Concerto in A major for my entrance exam portfolio. I blinked. Are you serious? He was, and honestly, so was I. Sure, it feels like you were just being told to bake a croquembouche after learning how to make toast. But we had no time to waste. These pieces were hard, way beyond what a beginner will normally tackle, but my professor believed I could do it, and that belief lit the fire in me. Now let's talk about my unsung heroes, my parents. God bless them. Every week, they drove me half an hour each way to my professor's studio. They never complained, never asked, "Are you sure this is worth it?" Instead, they showed up with warm lattes, snacks I loved, and words that melted any doubt. Our daughter is the best. Let's work hard together and reach your dream. Trust yourself, you're gonna make it. If they couldn't drive me, I'd call a taxi, hauling my cello, which is the size of a small refrigerator, stacks of music scores, and the tote bag by myself. I'd wobble down on the street like a determined but slightly overambitious tortoise. Taxi drivers would often help me load and unload the cello carefully. Bless those kind souls. If I grabbed lunch between lessons, total strangers in food carts would keep an eye on my cello when I ran to the restroom. Somehow, I never feel alone. The kindness of others followed me like a quiet guardian angel. When audition day arrived, I was a mixture of nervous and calm. I knew I wasn't the most technically perfect player in the room, but I had heart. I had passion. I had given everything I could. My dream school still felt like a distant star, brilliant, magnetic, but painfully out of reach. I poured my soul into the audition room. I played like my future depended on every bow stroke, because in a way, it did. But the result? I didn't get in. I love to tell you that I handled the rejection with a graceful maturity, that I nodded and whispered, all part of God's plan. But the truth? I cried, I doubted, I second-guessed everything, and then I made peace. Because looking back, I had already accomplished something extraordinary. I learned the cello from scratch and gave an audition at the music conservatory in just 6 months. Who does that? And even though I didn't get into my dream school, I did get into an ideal school. And I walked into it with my cello in one hand and quiet determination in another. I told myself, this is not the end. This is just the beginning. If there's one thing I should have tattooed on my arm, it's this. Don't try to fight every battle alone. Just kidding. I think my next tattoo will be the scripture in the Bible. Haven't decided yet though. But of course, I didn't learn that the easy way. When I was a freshman, something stirred in me again. A voice that whispered, "Try again. Maybe you'll get into your dream school at this time." So I prepared for another audition, secretly. I didn't tell my teacher in the college. I didn't ask for help. I just practiced. Crazily, harder than ever. And guess what? I got rejected. Again. The second rejection stung in a different way. Not because of the result, but because I had tried to do it alone. It taught me a powerful truth. Before asking why not me, I had to ask, why me? Before demanding doors to open, I had to ask, what value do I bring to the table? It also reminded me that it's okay to ask for help. In fact, it's essential. Community isn't weakness, it's strength. It's the safety net beneath the high wire of ambition. That year wasn't just musically difficult, it was emotionally disorienting. I was adapting to college life, wrestling with insecurity, and adjusting to the rhythm of adult responsibilities. There were moments when I felt like I was drowning in expectations, both from others and from myself. But somehow, in the chaos, something in me kept practicing, kept hoping, kept growing. Because I had a deep-rooted belief that all this effort, all the struggle, will help someday bloom into something beautiful. The barren road that now looks like a desert will one day bloom with flowers. Me, talking to myself on a random Thursday while over practicing Popper etudes. Then came my second year. That's when everything started to shift. I had spent my first year as a concertante in the school string orchestra, floating in the middle, trying not to mess up the bowings. Back then, there wasn't even an official title for principal cellist. But in my second year, a brand new orchestra was born, Sinfonia. And with that birth came an announcement. Auditions were happening, and every section will have a principal. I knew what I had to do. I picked my weapon, Elgar's cello concerto. When your dream was first ignited by Jacqueline Dupré, you tend to go big. There was just one problem. I was also juggling 5 million other things that week. Let's review. I was helping a friend to move. Then, surprise, my mom announced we needed to move as well, immediately. I was preparing for 2 mini concerts. I was arranging pieces for my cello quartet. I was practiced like a maniac. And then I got sick. Not just a sniffle, I mean sick. Fever, headache, sneezing like an earthquake, coughing like I'd swallowed a clarinet reed. I remember sitting in the practice room, hacking up a lung while trying to phrase Elgar's haunting melodies with elegance. At one point, I literally stuffed tissues in my nose while practicing excerpts so I wouldn't sneeze during the runs. If anyone had walked in, they would have thought I was doing a performance art. But no way was I going to let a virus steal this moment from me. I took medicine, drank Americanos like potions, and told myself, this seat is mine. Audition day come. I wasn't 100%, but I had peace. And a strange cocktail of adrenaline and caffeine. I walked into that hall with my cello and gave it everything I had. A week later, the results arrived. A seating chart appeared in my inbox. Laura Chu, Principal Cello. There was even a little star next to my name. I stared at the screen, I blinked, I smiled, and I laughed. I have done it! I had earned the seat that I dreamed of, and I held onto it until the course ended in my curriculum. Being principal cellist wasn't just a label or a chair. It was a deeply personal victory, especially for someone like me, a late starter and a left-handed player who didn't fit the standard mold. I'm forever grateful to the conductors and music directors who never treated me differently because of how I held a bow or which hand was dominant. They gave me opportunities to learn, to lead, and to shine. That generosity changed my life. And I have to say, being part of that orchestra wasn't just about performing, it was about belonging. Many of the musicians were my close friends. We laughed, we argued about bowings and fingerings, we goofed off while the conductor adjusted winds, we sneaked off for bubble tea or snacks during breaks, we took chaotic selfies backstage. That orchestra became as a home. And every time we played together, different voices united towards one musical vision. I feel like we were waving a tapestry of moments. A few notes here, a few jokes there. Music stitched together with friendships and fire. Though we are not perfect, though we still have large spaces to grow. And that wraps up today's episode. These were just the opening chapters of my musical journey. The story's still unfolding, and I can't wait to share more with you. I hope you feel the joy of walking with me through each twist and turn, and maybe found a bit of inspiration along the way. Got thoughts on left-handed musicians, or my rather non-traditional beginning? Leave a comment or message me. I'd love to hear from you. In the next episode, we'll step into one of the most meaningful moments of my life, my first recital. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.